So, welcome to LiberalViewer First Wednesday Live Q&A. This is the live show I do on the first Wednesday of every month, answering viewer questions, both questions that have been posted during the month, and also if I have any live viewers on a Wednesday afternoon, at least in my time period, I will answer your live questions as well. I'm hoping to do a kind of a quick show focusing on the Indiana Religious Freedom Restoration Act law that's been in the news. I've gotten a couple questions about that, and so that's what I'm going to focus on, although I will check those of you who have joined me live and see if you have any other questions for me to talk about. But if you look down in the video description down below this video, you'll see that I put a link to the full text of the Indiana law, and also a link to the text of the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act law, so you can compare the two. And for those of you who didn't watch my Sunday show last Sunday, I showed the governor of Indiana sort of dodging questions about what his law says, and I hadn't actually read the law last Sunday because it's been kind of a hectic week and I was away for the weekend for my birthday and several other things, but I wanted to replay those clips, and now that I've read the law and I've analyzed it a little and I think I can give some more commentary, I want to talk about what's in the Indiana law because a couple people have asked me questions about that over in the comment section of the Sunday video. So first I want to play a couple clips of the governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, on This Week with George Stephanopoulos last Sunday, kind of dodging the question about what's in the law, and then I'm going to critique the honesty of the governor of Indiana after I show those clips. First, here's a long clip of him dodging the question about whether the law allows businesses to discriminate against gays and lesbians over here.
That is that in Indiana, your civil rights laws don't include sexual orientation as a protected class, and even some of the supporters of the bill who appeared with you when you signed the bill, Eric Miller of Advance America, wrote that it will protect those who oppose gay marriage. He put up this example. He said, Christian bakers, florists, and photographers should not be punished for refusing to participate in a homosexual marriage. So this is a yes or no question. Is Advance America right when they say a florist in Indiana can now refuse to serve a gay couple without fear of punishment?
Well, let me explain to you. The purpose of this bill is to empower, and has been for more than 20 years, George. This is not speculative. The purpose of this legislation, which is the law in all 50 states in our federal courts, and it's the law by either statute or court decisions in some 30 other states, is very simply to empower individuals when they believe that actions of government impinge on their constitutional First Amendment freedom of religion. And frankly, George, there's a lot of people across this country who, you're looking at Obamacare and the Hobby Lobby decision, looking at other cases, who feel that their religious liberty is being infringed upon, and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act at the federal level, and all the states now, including Indiana, who have it, are simply about addressing that. This is not about discrimination. This is about empowering people to confront government overreach, George.
Though, on it, because your supporters say it would. And so yes or no, if a florist in Indiana refuses to serve a gay couple at their wedding, is that legal now in Indiana?
George, this is where this debate has gone with misinformation and frankly,
it's just a question, sir. Yes or no?
Well, there's been shameless rhetoric about my state and about this law and about its intention all over the internet. People are trying to make it about one particular issue, and now you're doing that as well. The issue here, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has been on the books for more than 20 years. It does not apply, George, to disputes between individuals unless government action is involved. And in point of fact, in more than 2 decades, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has never been used to undermine anti-discrimination laws in this country.
Sir, I'm just bringing up a message from one of your supporters. That was one of your supporters who was talking about the bill right there. It said it would protect a Christian florist who against any kind of punishment. Is that true or not?
George, look, the issue here is, is tolerance a two-way street or not? I mean, there's a lot of talk about tolerance in this country today having to do with people on the left. But here Indiana steps forward to protect the constitutional rights and privileges of freedom of religion for people of faith and families of faith in our state. And this avalanche of intolerance that's been poured on our state is just outrageous. You've been to Indiana a bunch of times. You know it. There are no kinder, more generous, more welcoming, more hospitable people in America than in the 92 counties of Indiana. And yet, because we simply stepped forward for the purpose of recognizing the religious liberty rights of all the people of Indiana, of every faith, we suffered under this avalanche for the last several days of condemnation, and it's completely baseless. It's
Governor,
not based on any fact whatsoever.
I completely agree with you about the good people.
And I think people are getting tired of it, George. I really do. Tolerance is a two-way street.
So when you say tolerance is a two-way street, does that mean that Christians who want to refuse service, or people of any other faith who want to refuse service to gays and lesbians, that it's now legal in the state of Indiana?
And of course, he never really answered the question, as I talked about on my Sunday show. But what I hadn't done on my Sunday show is I hadn't had a chance to read the Indiana bill. And one thing that he said in that last clip that is just totally untrue is he said it has to be government action. There's no private action in the Indiana law. And I put a link both to the Indiana law and to the federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act so you can compare the two, and there are significant differences. So what he said about them being the same is also not true. But here's what it says about private actions without oops, sorry, wrong one. Wait, did I get the wrong? Oh, no, this is the right one. Section 9, a person whose exercise of religion has been substantially burdened or is likely to be substantially burdened by a violation of this chapter may assert the violation or impending violation as a claim or defense in a judicial or administrative proceeding. That means any court action, right? Regardless of whether the state or any other governmental entity is a party to the proceeding. So it's not just government action. What he said is totally untrue. If the relevant governmental entity is not a party, then they can become a party. But there's nothing in there that requires it to be governmental action. In fact, it says the exact opposite of what the governor of Indiana said in that last clip. And I want to play one more clip of him dodging the question about what is in his own law that he signed, and then at the same time pretending he's trying to clarify what's in there without answering the question. This is also a clip I played last Sunday over here.
Every Hoosier of every faith.
Final question, final yes or no question, Governor. Do you think it should be legal in the state of Indiana to discriminate against gays or lesbians?
George,
it's a yes or no question.
Come on. Hoosiers don't believe in discrimination. I mean, the way I was raised in a small town in southern Indiana is you're kind and caring and respectful to everyone. Anybody that's been in Indiana for 5 minutes knows that Hoosier hospitality is not a slogan, it's a reality. People tell me when I travel around the country, gosh, I went to your state and people are so nice. I mean, this is not about discrimination. This is about protecting the religious liberty of every Hoosier, of every faith, and we're going to continue to work our hearts out to clarify that to the people of Indiana and the people of this great country.
Yes or no, should it be legal to discriminate against gays and lesbians?
George, you're following the mantra of the last week online, and you're trying to make this issue about something else. What I am for is protecting, at the highest standards in our courts, the religious liberty of Hoosiers. I signed the bill. We're going to continue to explain it to people that don't understand it. And if possible, we will find a way to amplify what this bill really is in the legislative process. But I stand by this law. It was an important step forward when Bill Clinton signed it in 1993. It's an important step forward to keeping the promises of our Bill of Rights and the First Amendment and our Indiana Constitution.
So yeah, that's the second clip, and when he says it's the same as the federal law, sorry about the little time lag there, I was trying to find one other little screen capture that I'm going to use in a few minutes, but what he said there about it being the same as the federal law, if you compare the two laws, like I said, I have links to both down in the video description, they're very different. First, the federal law only applies to a person. It doesn't apply to a for-profit business or a corporation unless it's interpreted to apply according to the Supreme Court. I mean, there is another part of the federal law that says when it says person in federal law, it also means a business or corporation. But that was one of the issues in the Hobby Lobby case as to how far how far you can stretch person to include businesses and corporations when you're talking about religious freedom, because how can a corporation have religious beliefs, especially if it's not a closely held family-owned business, which Hobby Lobby was. That's what the Supreme Court said, is that at least in the Hobby Lobby case, where it's a closely held family-owned business, then it can have religious beliefs. But they never said it was going to be any corporation or private business. But if you look over at the Indiana law, over here you see in this chapter, a person includes the following: an individual, an organization, a church, a partnership, limited liability corporation, a corporation, a firm, a society, a joint stock company, an unincorporated association, or another entity that may sue and be sued. So basically, any business can use this law. It's not just a person, and that is really important. I think a difference between the real religious freedom that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was supposed to protect, and the way that it's being used in the state Religious Freedom Restoration Acts to allow discrimination. What I wanted to talk about the difference between those is, in one case they're allowing an individual religious freedom, and in another case they're allowing individuals and businesses to use the guise of religious freedom to discriminate against others and to hurt third parties. And that's a big difference between the reasons that groups like the ACLU supported the Religious Freedom Restoration Act federally, which was supposed to undo a bad Supreme Court decision, Employment Division versus Smith, that said that someone who used, it was actually peyote and got fired for it, couldn't collect unemployment insurance because it was firing for cause, for using drugs. That even though they were Native Americans, where using peyote was part of their religious ceremonies, they couldn't use the First Amendment as a defense, even though it substantially burdened their religious beliefs. And the ACLU was among many groups that supported this legislation to undo that bad Supreme Court decision, to give individuals the right to have religious freedom against laws that substantially burden their religious freedom. But these RFRA laws are being used in a different way to hurt third parties, which is very different. To use the law to discriminate against a third party, using peyote in your religious ceremony, that doesn't hurt anybody, right? But using religious freedom to not serve people in your restaurant or your hotel, that's entirely different. And that's something I wanted to show you from the ACLU of Northern California. That's the screen capture I was just taking a minute ago that made me run the clip a little long. This is the executive director of the ACLU of Northern California, Abdi Sultani, just posted something on the website, and I will put a link down to that if you're watching this as a recorded show. This is the last couple paragraphs. And you'll see Abdi says, first, it's an affront to our nation's values of equality and the freedom to live without discrimination to allow discrimination against a group, in this case, gays, lesbian, LGBT people, on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. That's not consistent with American values, but it's also not consistent with what we believe about religious freedom. These laws are an affront to our tradition of religious freedom, because religious freedom in our country means that we can each practice the religion of our choice, or no religion if we choose. Religious freedom means that we should not discriminate against people because of their religion. It does not mean that we can use our religion, our religious beliefs, to discriminate against others. And that, I think, is a really important distinction between the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that many people supported on a federal level, that was supposed to undo this bad Supreme Court decision, Employment Division versus Smith, that penalized Native Americans for using peyote in their religious services that didn't hurt anybody, and substantially burdened their religious beliefs, and then use that Religious Freedom Restoration Act instead to allow people to discriminate against others and hurt third parties. That's a whole different thing, and that's not religious freedom, that's discrimination. Anyway, so I wanted to make that point because people had asked me about that in the comment section of my video from last Sunday, where I played those clips from Indiana Governor Mike Pence. I also noticed along the way one of my live viewers, here you can see Paranor001 said, Arkansas has joined Indiana in bills and their problems, although it's actually my understanding that the governor of Indiana has sent it back to the legislator to change the wording so that it specifically says that it doesn't allow businesses to discriminate or refuse to serve people. So I don't know what the wording is exactly of that Arkansas bill, but like I said, you can look at the Indiana bill, and even Governor Mike Pence, since he did that really bad job last Sunday of dodging questions about what's actually in his bill, he's now said that he would accept changes from his legislature to make it clear that it doesn't allow businesses to discriminate, because in its current form it definitely does. And then I want to take one question that was posted before the show. This is from Terry Alther, who I always enjoy seeing his questions every month for the first Wednesday Q&A, live Q&A show. Here's Terry Alther's question. I posted a link down in the video description to the question, so you can click on the article, even though I don't have any screen captures of the article. But it says, question for today, how realistic is this proposal? Is this even going to work? And it says, why Indiana's religious freedom law is great news for student debtors. And if you follow that link and read the article, it's some Occupy movement person, or an Occupy movement website anyway, saying that if you owe student loans, you can say that you don't believe in such high interest under your religious freedom rights, and so you refuse to pay back the loans. And basically, in my legal opinion, that is not going to work at all, because if you don't believe in a certain interest rate, your recourse is then not to take out the loan. You can't take out the loan and then after you get the money say that you refuse to comply with the terms of a contract that you voluntarily signed based on your religious beliefs. If you had those religious beliefs, you shouldn't have signed the contract in the first place. It's like, under these religious freedom, or under these non-discrimination law cases, like there was a New Mexico case where I think it was a florist, or was it a baker, someone who didn't want to either give flowers or a cake to a same-sex wedding because of their religious beliefs, and they ended up getting fined. And I think the New Mexico Supreme Court upheld that fine because they were a public accommodation and they opened up their services to everyone. And if you were to try to take the point of view of this student loan case, and you'd say that the baker or the florist could say, okay, I'm going to take the money, you can pay me to give flowers to your same-sex wedding or a cake to your same-sex wedding. I'm going to take the money, but then based on my religious beliefs, I'm not going to deliver the flowers or the cake. Somehow, I don't think that, even the case to try to say that they didn't have to give the services at all, that was not a winner in New Mexico. But I can't believe any court would allow someone to say that they voluntarily entered into a contract, and then after they got their side, their benefit of the contract, all of a sudden their religious beliefs say they can't follow through on their obligation under the contract. I don't think that's going to fly anywhere in any court, but that's my answer to Terry Alther's question. I noticed that I've got about 20 live viewers here, but not a lot in the way of additional questions. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the Indiana law and the specific sections from the Indiana law and how they refute what the governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, said last Sunday. Now that I've had more time to look it over, I'm going to be doing my Sunday show as usual at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. I think I'm going to finish up this show now, and you can let me know what you think. If you want to post questions for next LiberalViewer First Wednesday Live Q&A for the first Wednesday of May, I will look here for questions for next month as well. Like I said, I've said on previous shows, I do enjoy questions that are posted beforehand, so I have a little time to research them, like I did. Although actually for Terry Althor's question, I didn't have to research that one, but I did have some time to research the Indiana law, and I hope you enjoyed my analysis. And I'll be seeing you next Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time for my regular Liberal Viewer Sunday Live clip roundup. And other than that, I guess I'll be seeing you all around the internet.